I was 16 when everything I loved started slipping through my fingers. My house, my father, my peace. My name is Ava Monroe, and if someone had told me back then that one day I'd make the woman who destroyed my life fetch my coffee, I would have laughed in their face. But fate, she's poetic. She waits. It all began the year my father remarried. Dad was the kind of man who believed in fixing things: cars, clocks, people. When my mom died, he broke in ways even he couldn't repair. Then she appeared. Rebecca Hale, a woman who looked like she stepped straight out of a magazine. Red lips, perfect posture, a voice dipped in honey and venom. The first time I met her, she extended her hand and smiled too wide. "Ava, sweetheart," she said, "your father's told me so much about you." I didn't take her hand. Something in me just recoiled. From the start, Rebecca was everywhere, redecorating rooms, replacing old staff, planning family dinners that felt more like auditions for affection. My dad was blind to it all. He saw charm, I saw calculation. The night I realized she was dangerous came 3 months after their wedding. I was coming home from a late study session when I heard voices in Dad's office. I shouldn't have listened, but I did. "It's too attached to the company, Charles. She's just a child. She doesn't understand business. You can't let her inherit that much control." Dad sighed. "Ava has been around the company since she was 10. She's earned that trust." Rebecca laughed softly, a sound like broken glass. "You're too sentimental. You'll thank me when you don't have to deal with her teenage drama and board meetings in the same week." I felt my stomach twist. I ran upstairs before I could hear more. From that night on, things changed. Slowly, carefully. Dad became distant, distracted, always taking business calls that ended with him exhausted. Rebecca started acting like the queen of the house, giving me fake smiles and unsolicited advice. My grades slipped, not because I stopped trying, but because I stopped sleeping. Then came the accident. Dad was driving home from a meeting late one night. The police said it was rain, faulty brakes, bad luck. But luck doesn't tamper with car wiring. I remember Rebecca's tears at the funeral, perfectly timed, perfectly staged. Cameras from the press were there because Monroe Tech was big news. She looked like the grieving widow, mascara running just right. I stood behind her, numb. My father's casket lowered, and the woman beside it already owned half his legacy. Within weeks, she took over everything. The lawyers said Dad's shares had been transferred to her to simplify succession. The will had been updated. I was left with a trust fund that barely covered tuition and a home that didn't feel like mine anymore. One afternoon, she called me into the living room, sipping from a crystal glass. "Ava," she said smoothly, "I think it's best if you take some time to figure yourself out. You've been through a lot. Maybe move out for a while. Get perspective." "You're kicking me out," I said flatly. She smiled, that same fake, soft smile. "Don't be dramatic. I'm giving you freedom." That night, I packed my bags. Before I left, I stood in my father's office once last time. His watch was still on the desk. I took it. I don't know why, maybe to remind myself that not everything she touched could be erased. The next few years were survival. I moved into a tiny apartment above a laundromat, got a part-time job at a coffee shop, then another job, then another. There were nights I'd fall asleep at the counter, head on my laptop, studying business law and finance. I wanted to understand how she did it, how she stole what wasn't hers. I learned everything: mergers, acquisitions, loopholes, boardroom politics. If Rebecca Hale could manipulate her way to power, I'd outsmart her with skill. By 24, I had a degree, a network, and a quiet rage that burned like fuel. My chance came when I met Ethan Rivera, a venture capitalist with more charm than sense. He walked into the same cafe I was working at, spilled coffee all over his suit, and laughed instead of yelling. "Guess I deserved that," he said, shaking his head. We started talking, then meeting again. Eventually, he offered me a job, assistant to a small tech investment firm. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a door. I worked harder than anyone. Stayed late, read everything, took notes in board meetings I wasn't invited to. Within a year, Ethan promoted me. By 26, I had my own small fund, Monroe Capital. The name wasn't random. It was a promise. Meanwhile, Rebecca's empire, Monroe Tech, started to show cracks. The company had grown fast under her leadership, but greed doesn't build stability. Rumors of fraud, employee walkouts, and silent partners pulling out began spreading. That's when I made my move. I started buying, not in my name, but through shell corporations and silent investors. Piece by piece, share by share. She didn't notice. Why would she? She thought I was long gone, some washed-up orphan chasing small dreams. By 28, I owned 48% of Monroe Tech, and she had no idea. Then came the gala, the company's 30th anniversary celebration. I walked into that glittering ballroom wearing the same perfume she used to mock when I was 16, the one she said smelt too cheap for a Monroe. The chandeliers have flected like shattered stars above the crowd. Investors, executives, journalists, everyone was there. And in the center, on stage, Rebecca Hale Monroe, still perfect, still poisonous. She was giving a speech about family values and innovation, her voice dripping with hypocrisy. When she spotted me across the room, she froze. Just for a second, but it was enough. After her speech, she approached me, her heels clicking like bullets. "Ava," she said, smiling thinly, "what a surprise." "Hello, Rebecca," I replied. My tone matched hers, sweet, venomous. "What brings you back to the world of grown-ups?" she asked, sipping champagne. "Oh, just business," I said casually. "You might have heard of Monroe Capital?" She faltered. Her smile faltered for a split second. "Can't say I have." "You will," I said, and walked away. That night, I became the ghost of her past, showing up at meetings, boardrooms, investor lunches, always calm, always watching. She started hearing whispers that someone was buying shares aggressively, consolidating power. She blamed her competitors. She never suspected me. Not yet. 2 months later, she found out. She barged into a shareholders' meeting, face pale, hands trembling. "Who authorized this?" she yelled, slamming papers down. The board looked uncomfortable. Finally, one of them, Mr. Partel, my father's old friend, spoke. "It was a unanimous decision, Rebecca. We've appointed a new majority owner." Her jaw tightened. "Who?" The doors opened. I walked in. For a second, no one breathed. Her face drained of color. "You." "Hello again," I said softly, walking to the head of the table. "I believe you're familiar with the Monroe legacy." You can't," she stammered. "Oh, I can. You see, I've been rebuilding what you destroyed, brick by brick, share by share, and as of this morning, I'm the new CEO of Monroe Tech." The silence was deafening. Rebecca tried to regain composure. "You don't know what you're doing. Running a company takes experience. Experience like marrying my father and forging his signature on a will," I said calmly, "or experience like laundering company funds through shell accounts?" She froze. "You don't have proof." I smiled. "Oh, I do. I've had it for years. You really should have hired better lawyers." The board erupted in murmurs. Cameras flashed. Rebecca's empire was crumbling, and I was the one pulling the strings. After the meeting, she found me alone in my father's old office. "You think you've won," she said, voice shaking. "But you're just like him. Sentimental. Weak." "Maybe," I said, turning to face her. "But at least I didn't destroy the family I claimed to love." Her eyes burned with hatred. "You'll regret this." I stepped closer. "The only thing I regret is not doing it sooner." She laughed, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. I sank into the chair, my father's chair, and finally exhaled. It didn't feel like victory. Not yet. Revenge rarely does. It felt like an ending, or maybe the beginning of something darker. Because power changes people, and I could already feel it changing me. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat on the balcony of my penthouse suite, looking out at the city lights. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. A text appeared. You think she was the only one. Your father's death wasn't just her doing. Be careful who you trust. Ava. I stared at the message, the words glowing in the dark. Someone else was involved. Someone still out there. And just like that, my story of revenge wasn't over. It had only just begun. The text kept replaying in my head. You think she was the only one? Your father's death wasn't just her doing. Be careful who you trust, Ava. No name, no number. Just that message, and a creeping sense that I'd only uncovered the first layer of something much darker. For days, I tried to ignore it, but paranoia has a way of whispering when the room is quiet. Every phone call, every meeting, every friendly smile suddenly felt staged. It didn't help that Rebecca hadn't gone quietly. After being removed as CEO, she refused to resign completely. She fought tooth and nail, dragging legalities, threatening the board, using her media connections to spin the story, poor widow betrayed by stepdaughter. She was losing, but she was loud. The board suggested a PR move. Keep her on in a symbolic role. Nothing with power, a glorified assistant. I agreed instantly. The next morning, the entire building buzzed when Rebecca Hale walked through the lobby in a tailored suit, clutching a company ID badge that read, Rebecca Hale, Executive Assistant to CEO Ava Monroe. The universe had finally developed a sense of irony. She looked at me with eyes that could burn through stone when she entered my office. You think this is your idea of revenge? Making me your secretary? No, I said, not looking up from my laptop. Revenge was taking everything you loved. This is just maintenance. She glared, but said nothing. For the next few weeks, Rebecca worked silently, or pretended to. Her tasks were small, scheduling, note-taking, reports, but she was sharp, too sharp to be underestimated. Every time she walked past my office door, I could feel her eyes on me. One day I caught her staring at a photo on my desk, my father and I at the company's old building. She turned when she noticed me watching. You really think he'd be proud of this? She asked. Proud that I survived you? Yeah, maybe, I said coldly. She smirked. You have no idea what kind of man your father really was. I froze. What the hell is that supposed to mean? She didn't answer, just walked out. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. My father? He wasn't perfect, but he was good, wasn't he? Still, the message on my phone echoed in my mind. You think she was the only one? Maybe Rebecca knew something. Maybe she wasn't the entire story. A week later, I got an invitation. Anonymous, again. A plain envelope slid under my office door. Inside was a single card. If you want the truth about your father's death, come alone. 10 p.m., Pier 39. I should have called security, should have burned it. But curiosity and vengeance are siblings, and both were screaming. That night, I drove down to the pier. The air was heavy with fog and salt. Boats creaked against the docks. Somewhere in the distance, a gull cried. A man stepped out of the shadows, mid-40s. Tall, wearing a leather jacket. Ava Monroe. Didn't think you'd actually come. Who are you? Someone who used to work for your father. Name's Marcus Bell. I handled security back then, until Rebecca fired me a week before his accident. Why? Because I found something. He pulled a small flash drive from his pocket. Surveillance footage from the night he died. Someone was at the office with him before he left. Someone who wasn't supposed to be there. Who? He hesitated. You're not going to like it. I snatched the drive from his hand. I'll decide that myself. Before I could ask more, headlights flared at the end of the pier. A black SUV screeched toward us. Run! Marcus shouted. We dove behind crates as gunshots cracked through the fog. Bullets splintered wood. Who are they? I yelled. People who don't want you seeing what's on that drive.
We scrambled for cover until the SUV roared away. Marcus was bleeding, a graze along his arm. He pressed the wound. "You need to get out of here. Don't go home. They'll find you." I didn't wait. I grabbed my keys and ran. I drove until sunrise, ending up at an old safe house I'd used years ago, a small cabin outside the city. My hands were shaking as I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. There was one video file, labeled simply Charles Monroe 1214.mp4. The footage was grainy. My father's office, time-stamped 2 hours before his crash. He was arguing with someone. I squinted, and then my stomach dropped. It wasn't Rebecca. It was Ethan Rivera, my Ethan. The man who had helped me build Monroe Capital, who'd laughed with me, trusted me, lifted me up from the dirt, was standing in my father's office screaming. The audio was faint, but I could make out fragments, like, "You promised funding, not your decision, then I'll handle it my way." Then, my father slamming the desk. "You're done, Ethan. I'm pulling the contract." He leaned in close, his voice low. "You'll regret that." The screen went black. I felt my heart stop. It couldn't be real. It couldn't. But the timeline matched. That night, that argument, that drive. And suddenly it made sense. How Ethan had found me. How he'd always known so much about Monroe Tech. How every move I'd made somehow felt guided. He hadn't rescued me. He'd been grooming me. The next morning, I went to the office like nothing was wrong. Ethan was waiting for me in the lobby, smiling, holding 2 coffees. "Hey, boss lady. Rough night?" "Yeah," I murmured, forcing a smile. "You look tense. Everything okay?" "Perfect," I said sweetly. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about a new investment opportunity. Something big, confidential." He leaned back in the chair. Curious. "You have my attention." I handed him a fake file I'd prepped overnight, one that looked like a merger plan for a rival company. He skimmed it. "Impressive. Who's behind it?" "I was hoping you could tell me." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "Oh, come on, Ethan. You don't really think I'm stupid enough to not notice you've been playing both sides, do you?" His eyes hardened. "What are you talking about?" "I saw the footage." He froze. For a second, he tried to keep up the act, the calm charm, the easy smile, but then it broke. He sighed. "I warned Rebecca this day would come." My blood went cold. "You and her—" "It wasn't supposed to be like this, Ava. Your father was about to pull out of our project. We were desperate. Rebecca made a call I didn't agree with, but once it was done, it was too late." "You killed him." He shook his head. "No, she did. I just let it happen." I stood up, trembling with rage. "You used me." He said, voice breaking, "I cared about you. I still do. But you have to understand, everything I did—" I slapped him, hard. "Get out," I said. He didn't move. "Ava, listen." I said, "Get out." He left, quietly. When the door closed, I sank to the floor. For years, I'd thought Rebecca was the villain of my story, but she was only the beginning. I spent the next few days digging deeper, tracing shell accounts, cross-referencing transactions. Ethan's name was everywhere. Payments from Monroe Tech to Rivera Holdings, weeks before my father's death. He had helped Rebecca stage the entire thing, then built me up, only to take control again through me. But I wasn't going to let that happen. The next board meeting was in 2 days. That was my moment. I called Marcus, who was recovering and hiding. "I need one more favor," I said. He laughed weakly. "I thought you might." The day of the meeting, the boardroom was packed. Ethan sat across from me, pretending nothing had happened. Rebecca sat near the corner, still pretending to take notes, though I could feel her eyes burning into me. I started calmly. "Before we begin, there's been a development. A security breach, internal." Ethan frowned. "What kind of breach?" The kind that kills CEOs, I said quietly. Then I clicked the remote. The projector screen came to life, playing the footage. The board gasped. Ethan stood. Ava, that's out of context. Oh, I think it's very much in context, I interrupted. You conspired with my stepmother to remove my father. You manipulated this company. You manipulated me. He tried to rush the projector, but Marcus appeared in the doorway, alive, bandaged, and armed with security clearance. You wouldn't do that if I were you. The room erupted, executives whispering, lawyers taking notes, cameras flashing. Ethan turned to me, desperate. Ava, please, you don't know what you're doing. You'll destroy everything your father built. I stood up. No, I'm saving it from people like you. 2 guards entered, handcuffs glinting. Ethan didn't fight. He just stared at me with something like pride and sadness. You're more like your father than you think. I know. He deserved justice, and I gave it to him. After the meeting, I found Rebecca waiting in my office. She didn't look smug anymore, just tired. So, you finally got what you wanted, she said. No, not yet. She laughed softly.
The text burned in my mind long after the screen went dark. The man who ordered your father's death isn't gone yet. Rebecca and Ethan were just pawns. The real player sits on your board, Mr. Patel. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at the message. My father's oldest friend. The man who taught me how to ride a bike, who'd sent birthday cards even after Dad's funeral. The one who'd voted to make me CEO. Patel wasn't just part of my father's life, he was family. And now someone wanted me to believe he was the devil behind it all. At first, I wanted to ignore it. Maybe it was another manipulation, another power play. But deep down, I knew something didn't add up. Because the night my father died, Patel was the first one to call me. Before Rebecca, before the police. He told me the news too fast. For 3 days, I watched him, quietly. I had Marcus tail his car. We tracked his meetings, his calls, his after-hours visits to places that didn't make sense for a man his age. One night, Marcus called me. He's meeting someone at an abandoned warehouse near the docks, 11 p.m. You'll want to see this yourself. I didn't hesitate. The night was cold. Wind tore across the water, slicing through my coat. The warehouse loomed like a skeleton against the skyline. Marcus and I slipped inside, moving through the shadows. Voices echoed, deep, male, low. We crept closer until we could see Patel standing in front of 2 men in suits. The investigation's getting too close, one of them said. Patel's voice was calm, too calm. It won't reach us. Rebecca and Ethan are just pawns. The real player sits on your board. I froze. He kept talking. Ethan's arrest was a good distraction, but we need to clean the trail. Monroe Tech must look legitimate before the acquisition. Acquisition? My stomach twisted. What about Rebecca? The other man asked. She's disposable, Patel said simply. We'll handle her next. My blood ran cold. I turned to Marcus, whispering, record everything. But my phone buzzed, loud, shrill. Patel's head snapped up. His eyes met mine through the darkness. Ava. Everything happened fast. He barked something to his men. Marcus shoved me toward the exit as gunfire erupted. We ran. Metal clanged, bullets tore through crates, a light exploded above me. Marcus shoved me behind a steel beam. Go, I'll cover you. No! Go, Ava! I ran, heart pounding, lungs burning. I made it to my car, peeled out of the lot, tires screaming. When I looked in the mirror,
Marcus wasn't behind me. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. By dawn, my phone rang. An unknown number again. I answered, voice shaking. Marcus? But it wasn't him. It was Patel. Ava, he said calmly. We need to talk. You killed him. I warned you not to dig too deep. You killed my father, I snapped. Silence. Then, I protected your father, and you have no idea what you're getting into. What does that mean? You think Rebecca and Ethan were your enemies. They were pawns, just like you. The line went dead. I went straight to the office. Rebecca wasn't there. She'd vanished after her firing. Ethan was in federal custody, and the board was restless. Rumors were spreading. Stock was volatile. Investors wanted reassurance. I had to play calm, but inside, my mind was spiraling. That afternoon, an envelope appeared on my desk. No name, no stamp. Inside was a single photo of my father and Patel shaking hands in a dimly lit room. The date printed at the bottom was 1 day before my mother's death, and behind them, standing in the shadows, was Rebecca Hale. The caption written on the back, in ink, it started long before you knew it. That night I went home, to the penthouse, sat on the floor, surrounded by everything I'd fought for, and suddenly it all felt meaningless. I'd spent years chasing revenge for my father's death, but what if he wasn't who I thought? What if the man I'd worshipped was part of it all? I opened my father's old watch, the one I'd taken from his desk the night Rebecca kicked me out. Something rattled inside. I pried open the back. There was a tiny microchip taped to the inner rim. When I connected it to my laptop, a folder appeared. One file, labeled Confession. I clicked. My father's voice filled the room. If you're hearing this, Ava, something's gone wrong. Rebecca and I built Monroe Tech with Patel's help, but Patel isn't who he pretends to be. He's working with a private consortium, laundering defense contracts through our tech division. I wanted out. I told him I'd expose him. That night I called Rebecca. I begged her to run, but she chose survival. If I die, find the files. Patel will do anything to keep them buried. I'm sorry, baby. I didn't protect you like I should have. The recording cut off with static. Tears blurred my vision. Patel hadn't just betrayed me, he'd silenced my father. The next day, I called an emergency board meeting. Patel was there, calm, smiling, pretending nothing had happened. Everything okay, Ava? He asked. I stared at him. Depends. Are you ready to confess? He blinked. Confess? I threw a USB on the table. My father's final recording. The room fell silent as I played it. His voice echoed through the boardroom, raw, terrified, real. Patel's mask cracked. When the file ended, everyone stared at him. He tried to speak. That recording is fake. Then explain this, I said, dropping the photo on the table. You, Rebecca, and my father, 1 day before my mother's death. What were you planning then? His face turned pale. You don't understand what's at stake here. No, you don't understand. You took everything from me. My family, my childhood, my peace. You built an empire on my father's blood, and now you'll watch it burn. Security burst in. Federal agents followed. Marcus had leaked everything before he vanished. They cuffed Patel while the board watched in stunned silence. As they led him away, he turned to me and said, You think you've won? There's always another layer. You'll see. And the worst part? I believed him. Months passed. Patel's arrest made headlines. Rebecca resurfaced only to cut a deal testifying against him for a reduced sentence. Ethan was gone, serving time. Monroe Keck stabilized under my leadership. Investors returned. The world called me the Phoenix CEO, the girl who rose from betrayal to rebuild an empire. But behind every success photo, every smile for Forbes and CNN, I felt hollow. Because revenge doesn't heal, it feeds. One night, as I walked through the office, I found Rebecca sitting in the waiting area. She looked smaller somehow, defeated. "What do you want?" I asked. "To say goodbye," she said softly. "They're moving me to another state for trial." I crossed my arms. "You should have said that years ago, before you ruined everything." She nodded. "You're right. I was scared, Ava. Patel threatened your father. He threatened me. I thought marrying him would protect us. I was wrong." For the first time, her voice broke. "He loved you, Ava. Your father, even when he was drowning in his mistakes. Don't lose yourself trying to fix his sins." I didn't answer. I couldn't. She stood. "I hope one day you forgive me, because if you don't, he'll never rest." Then she walked away, and I realized forgiveness isn't weakness, it's freedom. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. Weeks later, I stood on the top floor of Monroe Tech. Staring out at the skyline, my reflection looked older, colder. A soft knock came. Marcus stepped in, alive, scarred but alive. "You look like hell," I said faintly. "Better than the alternative. You should have told me you were alive." He shrugged faintly, wanted to make sure Patel's people weren't watching.
If you enjoyed watching this story, we would truly appreciate it if you subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us and keeps us motivated to create more emotional and inspiring stories for you.